That's where the deficit is. Now, what do you do about that? Do you put in place a constitutional amendment that has some really interesting, and when the American public understands what is in that amendment, it's not just balanced budget. There are real things in that amendment. And that amendment, if ever put in place, will have extraordinary consequences for America. In my view, none of them positive. Soundbite is great. Balance the budget. Force the government to balance the budget, just like we do at home. Hello, America. Do you really balance your budget every month, every year? I don't think so. We take out a mortgage to buy a house. That's borrowing money, folks. That's not balancing your daily budget. That's borrowing money, and now you've got to pay the mortgage, pay the interest. And when you lose your job, or when you're laid off, or when you're cut back in hours, what do? You do your best to cut expenses, and then you probably are going to borrow more money. Maybe the home equity loan, maybe the credit card to get by. We all do that, all of us. It's not so easy to, at the end of every year, balance the budget. 49 states, yes, they have a balance of budget amendment. I'm from California. Democrat Jerry Brown facing a balanced budget amendment. Guess what? Borrows money. Doesn't balance the budget. Oh, and his predecessor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Republican, conservative, said he was going to blow up boxes and balance the budget. Happened twice in the 7 years that he was governor that he was able to balance the budget. Why did this happen? Why did it happen? America asked the question, what is in the balanced budget amendment? I'll tell you what's in it. A requirement that a 2/3 vote be enacted, be there for every expenditure and every tax increase. A 2/3 vote. This is a fundamental shift in the very nature of American democracy. We had a dozen wonderful representatives of the Republican Party talk for an hour here, and not once did they mention that the American democracy will be forever changed. No longer majority rule. A fundamental tenet of American democracy, majority rule, pushed aside, and now, should this ever become law, a minority rule. 1/3 of this House, 1/3 of the Senate, dominating the will of 65% of every elected representative and senator. The end of the most fundamental tenet of American democracy. The end of majority rule. It also works in a very pernicious and bad way. You can cut taxes. You can cut taxes with a majority vote. It takes a 2/3 to raise taxes. So, years and years ago, the oil industry had the opportunity in our democracy to receive a tax reduction. They got a tax reduction. And the oil industry went on with that tax reduction called a subsidy so that they can explore for oil and gas. For 100 years, they have had a tax break. Now, we can give them another tax break, but under the balanced budget amendment, it would take a 2/3 vote to take away the tax reduction, the tax break, the subsidy that they have received for 100 years, a century. Would take a 2/3 vote to do that, because that would be considered to be a tax increase. So what does it mean to the oil industry? Well, here's their profits from last year. Let's see. Exxon, $10.7 billion. Oxy, $1.6. Conoco, 2.1, Chevron 6.2, BP of Gulf fame 7.2 billion. That's their profit. Part of that profit is your tax dollar. Part of that profit is the tax dollar of every American that has been given to the oil companies for more than a century so that they can go explore for oil. Is there an American that believes that the oil industry needs our tax dollars to continue to be viable? I don't think so. But if the constitutional amendment passes, becomes part of our Constitution, a majority of this House and the Senate could increase the subsidy, but it would take a 2/3 vote to get our money back. We need to understand the details of what a balanced budget amendment means. I notice that I've been